Hello, everyone. Welcome to the CIRI webinar, Restorative Justice for Collective Liberation, Intergenerational Partnerships for Just and Equitable Schools. I know that some people are still arriving and will come in as we're getting underway this morning. I guess I should say this afternoon, I apologize. My name is Stuart Points, and I'm a co-director of the Community Engaged Research Initiative at Simon Fraser University. And before we get underway with the webinar, and as part of our normal practice, we at CIRI and at SFU want to acknowledge the land on which our work is taking place, the original inhabitants and owners of this land. I want to mark the fact that Simon Fraser University respectfully and with gratitude acknowledges that we work on the shared traditional Coast Salish lands of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh people, as well as the Coquitlam nations in Vancouver and Burnaby respectfully. As well, we acknowledge the Katsi, Kwantlen, Coquitlam, Kakite, Musqueam, and numerous Stolo nations in Surrey, where servers that are bringing this event to us today are located. We acknowledge the sovereignty and equality of Indigenous nations, and are guided by aspirations to remake Canada into a decolonial state comprised of Indigenous and non-Indigenous people who function with respect for one another. It's a tremendous honor to come together today, a webinar that brings together people from indeed across the continent. And we're really excited to see so many people have joined us and to know the panel that's ahead. CIRI, the Community Engaged Research Initiative, is a 4-year-old institute at Simon Fraser University, which brings creates the capacity to support and lead and circulate and produce community engaged research across a number of different areas of knowledge mobilization with a host of different communities and community leaders. CIRI is a new social infrastructure, one that aims to work with community in deep and collaborative ways that recognize the respect and guidance and leadership that community can provide to knowledge mobilization and research activities. We're grateful to have you with us, and I want to point to our website where you can find out more about SFU CIRI's programs and opportunities. I want to let you know, as I think you've all heard, that this afternoon's event is being recorded. The leader who's going to draw us through this event, Brenda Morrison, I apologize. Dr. Brenda Morrison is one of the co-conspirators with CIRI's Children and Youth Participatory Research Network. She's also director of SFU's Research and Engagement Center for Restorative Justice. Her bio is in the chat, and I'll just note that along with leading numerous community engaged research projects nationally and internationally, Brenda also leads SFU's certificate in Program in Restorative Justice, which is open to communities, professional and otherwise. The aim is to bring restorative justice into education, into healthcare and other fields. The link to the certificate program is also in the chat. And with that, it's my honor to welcome to the stage, as it were, Brenda Morrison, and I'm going to pass on the hosting of today's event to her. Brenda, welcome.
Thanks so much, Stuart, for that very warm welcome to this wonderful space we have here today together. And welcome, everyone. I am delighted that you have joined us. So wonderful that you're all here with us today. We have a remarkable set of speakers ahead. My name is Brenda Morrison. My ancestors hail from the Highlands and Lowlands and Islands of Scotland. I'm a settler here on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples. Today I'm calling in from Nicolagua, which is just off the north shore of a place we now call Vancouver. And today I have the remarkable honor of hosting our guests, Anita, Evelin, Heather, and Leslie, three of which have authored a small and powerful book that you'll hear about soon. But as we begin, as we gather, I'd like to bring our community agreements into our hearts and into our minds. Here at CIRI and at SFU, we practice harm reduction. No harmful behavior or language of any kind to anybody. Address people by their names and their preferred pronouns. And take some space, but also make some space. Everyone deserves to be seen and heard, and always practice self-care. With that in mind, we want your engagement too. Please, as questions come up for you, there's a Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. Please allow those questions to bubble up and put them in as they pop up into your minds and into your hearts. And we'd love to hear each and every question. And there's also at the very bottom, live captioning, or you can press that button and captions will appear, and the transcript button as well. So with those agreements and that little bit of knowledge in mind, let's move forward and talk about what's happening this afternoon. So we've had the introductions for Stuart and I, but we're going to introduce ourselves the way we do in a restorative justice practice. A restorative way of being is relational. We speak for ourselves and not for others. And we often pass a talking piece. And a talking piece not only offers us an opportunity to be heard, but also invites deep listening. And we're going to use a magic talking piece today, one that's held in our imaginations as we pass it along from speaker to speaker. We're going to have two rounds. The first round in a restorative justice process is often very relational. So we'll hear each speaker will introduce themselves in the way that they want to be seen today. After that, we'll talk about intergeneration, defining youth. We'll have three rounds, sorry. We'll go through defining the youth engagement and restorative justice. We'll go on to thinking more about intergenerational partnerships, collective liberation, and then we'll hear from Leslie, who will talk about the impacts of these intergenerational partnerships on her life. And then finally, we'll have a Q&A session, which I hope will be rich with your questions. And so with that, everybody's bio is in the chat, but I'm going to pass our virtual talking piece first to Anita. It's been an honor to witness the blossoming of her work over many years. Over to you, Anita.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you're at. Brenda Morrison is a mentor of mine and an advisor on my dissertation research. So I'm really honored to be here. As far as my introduction, I want to acknowledge that I come from descendants of Punjabi refugees who came from Pakistan on both sides of my family during partition. And I'm the daughter of Anita, of Darshan and Evelin Wadhwa. I live in Houston. I've been an educator since 2001, English teacher, in-school suspension teacher, dean of students, restorative justice coordinator. I have two daughters, and a lot of the work that I do with restorative justice in schools is to provide healing for students, healing in the face of institutional barriers, some of which I faced myself growing up as a student of color in the United States. And right now, I would like to introduce you and pass the talking piece to Leslie Lux, who is a former student of mine and restorative justice alum.
Hello, everyone. My name is Leslie. I am currently a junior at the University of Houston, which is in Texas, and I'm currently working with my Master's of Science in Psychology. So hopefully soon I'll be able to implement restorative justice into my practices and, hopefully somewhere beyond that. And I've been very, very honored to be here alongside all these wonderful people. And yeah, I'm just here to learn more. I'm not an expert, right? We continue to learn, and I've been doing restorative justice for 6 years. So now I will pass it to Evelin.
Greetings, my name is Evelin Aquino, hija de Juan and Juana Aquino, two strong people that left their islands of Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic to come to this country, to the United States, to provide a better future. And I hope I'm doing them justice for the work that I've done in my adult life and youth life. I'm a descendant of strong people from the Caribbean that were colonized and that continue to be colonized, and people who embody ancestral wisdom and pass it on through generations, and that guides me. I'm first generation American born, and my life experiences propelled me to do my part in honoring the dignity of our communities and the humanity of our young people. And much of that comes from my own experience as a person of color in schools and in communities that did not see us as powerful. But yet I felt that way. I started off as a young leader in my community, very unexpected to teachers and adults, to later becoming an educator in programming for young people who were often very much overlooked and pushed to the margins, and have continued my career, including the arts as a voice, a place to express themselves. And now I have become a cultural strategist in shifting school culture and a trainer and coach. Thank you. And I will pass it to Heather Manchester.
Evelin, good to hear everyone introduce themselves. And basically, my name is Heather Manchester. I was raised on and by unceded Southern Pomo and coastal Miwok land in Northern California, and live for however half my life on unceded Ohlone people's land in Oakland, California. I come from a large family who immigrated from County Meath and County Clare, Ireland. I'm the oldest daughter of the oldest daughter for 4 generations. And as my now 6'2" baby cousin teased me this morning, I take my matriarchal role rather seriously with the playfulness of a 6-year-old. I grew up in a church that valued intergenerational community and social justice, with elders who modeled seeing young people and supporting their leadership and growth. I got to apply and deepen this learning, working in partnership with young people in different youth leadership, theater, and educational spaces over the years. I was working in OUSD with many young people who'd been expelled and suspended when Our Joy was forming in Oakland. And we were being reminded of what Circle was and what it meant to deepen and build community and not just have Band-Aids for things that were happening in our schools. What does it mean to shift the systems? And over that time, we were able to partner and continue to grow and work with folks to grow a youth engagement movement in restorative justice in Oakland Unified School District. And I now work with Creative Change Collaborative, which is an intergenerational org that builds capacity, systems, and skills to create restorative communities and relationships that are rooted in equity and justice in Oakland. And with that, I guess I'd pass it to myself, where I get to introduce the book and how it came to be and why we felt that it would be a good thing to do. So to get started a little bit in this story, I think I was lucky enough to meet Evelin many years ago through youth organizing and equity work, and realized we had many friends in common from times back to working, I guess we were saying, to working on Prop 21 or to stop Prop 21 in California, which took away young people's rights. And I met Anita through when she brought young people to Oakland from Houston, and was able to connect them with other young people in Oakland and organize working in schools. And so meeting these two amazing humans and hearing about the young people that they got to work with and what they were doing seemed that we all should come together in some ways. And at one point, Evelin had said, you know, most of the folks that are writing books or putting things out there are writing from a space of theory. And what does it mean to write from a space of a practitioner? And what does it mean to try to lean into embodying the values of youth engagement embodying the values of intergenerational partnerships while writing a book in a system that really isn't set up to hold those values, a publishing system that I think doesn't have ways that like necessarily that 3 writers can really hold equity. And so what we did is we came together and people from 3 different regions, from Houston, from Texas, from Massachusetts, from California, and in partnering with the young people that we get to work with in our communities, the alumni, worked at weaving this book together. And what did it mean to pass the talking piece across Zoom during the pandemic, and support each other during the pandemic and in writing and weaving this book? What did it mean to also do that regionally across where we were with the young people and alumni during the pandemic? What did that mean to have folks come together with different learning styles, with English as a second language, with different ways that we all learn and support each other and really embody equity? I feel like that's what we were trying to do as this book became weaved together. So with that, I think what we felt was super important in that is that, and how do we deeply embody our values while writing this? And I think, you know, here as in Oakland and looking across the country right now, and young people across countries and borders are organizing for equitable education and restorative justice in schools. They're working to transform punitive school systems and incorporate ethnic studies in curriculum. They're running for school board, they're writing policy and transforming systems. And the purpose of this book is to illuminate that theory and practice of youth engagement in RJ through intergenerational partnerships where young people are agents of change. And so it has been a journey that we continue to keep learning on. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Evelin, who is going to talk to us about youth engagement.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you, Heather. That was excellent framing for where we were headed. So when we talk about youth engagement, you know, we all know about youth programs and how to include young people in having a say. But there's different levels, and we were able to use Adam Fletcher's ladder of engagement and pick it apart in where that starts off from tokenism all the way up to youth adult equity. And we pushed the envelope a little bit when it came to the ladder. For those that don't know, it's often used in looking at youth engagement and how to engage with more the empowered and young people at the table. And we pushed it a little bit to move it toward liberation. What does it look like to share that power and to really take the lead from young people on what's important to them? So in a snippet, that is a chapter you will find when we look at breaking down the ladder. But really, we defined it as youth engagement and restorative justice in schools create spaces for personal and societal transformation and honors that young people are resilient social actors, participating in their communities as leaders and peace builders. Adults do not give youth voice. Students have agency and demonstrate it in ways others might not understand. Young people engage all the time, whether it is convenient for adults or not. And that is at the heart of much of the work that we spoke on and highlight in the work. And really, when we talk about youth engagement, it wasn't just like in participatory and you know, get their ideas, see what they like. It's really looking at youth engagement and restorative justice that transcends involving young people, not only as circle keepers. And we acknowledge that this work takes time, deep reflection, continuous relationship building, and intentional strategizing with youth as partners. And with that said, what you see on the screen is it's in the book, it's a chart of different modalities that creates a typology for youth engagement and restorative justice. So when we talk about the most popular, which is youth as circle keepers, youth will, in some schools, we encourage that youth design, not just follow a script, but that youth develop the skills to design and keep circles inside, but also outside their schools. And, you know, we are acknowledging the capabilities of young people and the power and capacity that they embody. And I'm starting with Circle Keepers. It's the most popular that we have found across the country. But we also wanted to highlight some other areas. And when we start the typology chapter, we mentioned young people make up the majority of a school's population and have vital perspectives on how to create equitable learning environments, but they are rarely part of key decisions that affect their lives. They, especially those pushed to the margins, must be at the center as decision makers. And so here are various modalities that we wanted to highlight. And I started with the youth as circle keepers, youth as educators. The youth create the curriculum and teach their peers in a restorative justice leadership class or a unit for some, social studies class, civic engagement. And then youth also train and coach both young people and adults in restorative justice circle process. So that's youth as educators. So I'm sorry, I'm not going in order here. Okay. Youth as decision makers. So youth serve on decision-making boards or bodies, including committees and again, boards that make decisions about policies and practices in schools and the district as voting and non-voting members. And we have plenty of examples of that in the book, especially when you read our case studies from each of our areas of examples of where students have power to make decisions and create policies that are applicable to their realities that are oftentimes quite more effective than the perspective of just adults doing it themselves. And they write policies at the school level, district level, local and statewide levels. We also here include youth as researchers and evaluators. Many of you have heard of YPAR, Youth Participatory Action Research, which is teaching the methods of research as an opportunity to collectively identify problems that impact their communities and schools and engage them in research to come up with recommendations or changes to address the issues, including structural ones. So it's not just what feels good, but really changing the system, because once you start going into root causes, you realize much of the situations that our young people find themselves in or the challenges have systemic and structural roots. The youth also evaluate the programs that do exist and the organizations that they're participating in and systems designed to serve them. Are they really serving them? So using and supporting young people as researchers and evaluators. We also have youth as organizers and the power that they hold there. Youth strategize and advocate for social change by defining the issues, using the research and political analysis, building alliances and coalitions, and engaging in direct action and political mobilization to shift power. And we have many examples of that across the state. Oakland just made a lot of noise around some of the police and schools that was on the horizon in the past year. But there's quite a bit of examples in different communities of youth as organizers as part of the work that's needed in the restorative justice in schools movement. And last but not least, youth as staff. Many young people within youth leadership and restorative justice in schools gain so much capacity that many times they graduate ready to be staff members, ready to be on in a paid role to really make programming effective. So students and alumni work as interns or fellows in the restorative justice leadership role to implement RJ at the site or district level or the school. They're paid and or they may get credit for it. So really it's on the premises that our young people, we are called to partner with them if we're going to be effective in really shifting the culture and the paradigm that's needed to make our communities and our schools restorative and really hone in that power. And this process in this book was incredible to do, like Heather spoke of, in intergenerational partnerships and really building the collective mind around how do we do this? How do we share this with everyone else around the work that's happening in our communities? And with that said, I pass it to Anita or Heather. I apologize to Heather. Sorry.
All good. So I get to talk a little bit about intergenerational partnerships. And I would first like to acknowledge Itzamar Carmona Felipe, who is an OUSD alum, RJ alum, and RJ fellow, and now is organizing with GSA in Northern California, and continuing to work for shifting schools and building strong community in schools. So while we were working on the book, Itzamar was a co-writer of the Oakland chapter and also a co-writer of the Shifting Leadership Chapter 9. And while we were writing those chapters, we interviewed like 30 Oakland youth and current high school youth and alum and middle school youth. And this quote on intergenerational partnerships came from those interviews. And it was when I was getting to talk with Itzamar about intergenerational partnerships. And they said that intergenerational partnerships acknowledge the wisdom in every human being, moving beyond youth and adults. They include babies, children, teenagers, young adults, elders, and every age group. Everyone has something to offer to the collective. And in our journey towards justice and equity in this world, we all have a role, no matter our age. And so this is the definition that came from working in partnership and learning with an alumni. And this is the definition that we offer, and it became a core value that the book was grounded in, one of the core values. And the reasoning, I think it's really important, and we can go to the next slide. Thank you, Itzamar, for sharing that with us. The reason that we chose intergenerational partnerships, because often in youth participation and youth engagement, we talk about youth adult partnerships, which has like a linear concept in many ways, right? And when we look at, if we're really shifting systems and building and strengthening community in restorative justice work in schools, we're in intergenerational partnerships. And here you can see our drawing, which that we originally just sketched out, I believe, on a piece of paper, and that where you have middle school students supporting elementary school students, you have elementary school students supporting younger students, right? You have high school students working with middle, you have alumni coming and supporting students, you have elders bringing wisdom into the schools and being in circle. And so it's multiple ways. And I think the image shows a flat drawing, but really this is almost like one of those toys that moves in and out and breathes, because this is like a moving way that we partner across and with each other, because we all have a lot to learn from each other. And that's about embodying intergenerational partnerships. Itzamar once said that on our team, like I was one of the middle age folks or whatnot, and then there were other elders on our team, and they had said that when they came to work on our team as an alumni, as a fellow, that we were already starting to live or be intergenerationally. And this isn't a new concept. Itzamar and I have had these conversations about growing up in intergenerational families and how working intergenerationally isn't new. It's something that I think about, like, as I mentioned before, being the oldest daughter of the oldest daughter and getting to be around, like when you're one of the oldest cousins, you get to be around the elders because they're still there with you when you're little. And then you also get to help learn, you learn from little ones learning to walk. And so this concept isn't new. It's in our families, it's in our communities. And it's, what does it mean to embody and hold it in our work in the schools? And also, what does it mean to model this work? So what does it mean to model the voices of multiple ages, continuing, to be in these pages and to recognize folks' voices? Like, we made sure that the young people from our regions got to read through the chapters. They edited, they changed things, they influenced how we make sure we use pronouns or talk about pronouns. We'll have discussions about it, things like that. So with that, intergenerational partnerships being one of the core values of the work we do. And we talk and show in the book how in each of our regions that plays out in one of the modalities that Evelin mentioned earlier. Also in the book, it also shows in each modality and around intergenerational partnerships are tips. Like, what are tips for working in partnership with each other? And those tips came from conversations with young people and adults in the regions and communities that we work and live. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Anita, who is going to move into one of our other core values on liberatory education. So thanks, Anita.
Thank you, Heather. Hi, Mom. Hi, 41 people who are here. Great to see you. We wanted to call this book not Intergenerational Partnerships for Just and Equitable Schools, but Partnerships for Liberatory Education or Liberatory Schools. But the concept of liberation is not as widespread as the concept of justice as equity, equity and equality. So we include this diagram. You've probably seen it. There's multiple iterations of it on the web, and doesn't mean that ours is better than others. We just offer another interpretation of what does equality, equity, and liberation look like? What are the differences? So when you see the first panel here, you see 4, say, students who are not only at different levels of the land, some are on sunken ground, they're also looking over a fence that is slanted. So depending on their vantage point, they have better access to a parade, opportunity, freedom, right? They're each given one crate. So the one crate is some kind of institutional support, the number of dollars per pupil per child in a school, the same textbooks, we're offering the same levels of support. Well, we know what we actually need more of is equity, because some students are starting at a disadvantage. We need to provide the proper amount of resources, perhaps more crates, perhaps different sized crates. And that's the concept of equity. One panel you don't often see is what we're trying to promote in this book. Restorative justice is not let us put young people in a circle and bond, build community, and lower suspension rates. Restorative justice is about transforming the very institutions that can be oppressive and create behaviors that we deem are inappropriate in the first place. And so together, across generations, we're going to be tearing down that fence, tearing down barriers. So the barriers include policies that punish Black students for wearing their natural hair, can include over-policing in schools. It can include, as Heather mentioned, banning ethnic studies. And the idea, the hope is that at the end, we are liberated, not just those who experience oppression, but those who enact it. And we are liberated from the hierarchy. We are liberated from the ideologies that value some people more highly than others based on your gender, your sexual orientation, your ability, your age, and many other factors. So for us, this is a radical project. Doing restorative justice is a radical project. Liberation is an ongoing journey. And so when we're working with young people, we are going through a political education. We are going through praxis. And what I mean by that is simply, what are social conditions that privilege some groups and disadvantage other groups? Who enacts these policies, this ideology? Who does it benefit? And then what can we do to dismantle it? And so for us, restorative justice has to be enacted intergenerationally to have maximum impact, and it has to be done with the focus of liberation. And right now I'd like to welcome Leslie Lux, who I met 7 years ago as a sophomore in my restorative justice class at a charter high school. Leslie is going to talk about restorative justice on our campus and how we try to move more towards a liberatory way of doing it and an intergenerational way of doing restorative justice. So Leslie, if you can come on camera. Hey. Hello from Houston. So I just wanted to start, and I'll just ask Leslie a few questions before we go to Q&A. And if you could start posting your Q&A now, that would be great. We'd love to hear from the audience. So Leslie, can you tell us a little bit about the restorative justice program at our high school?
Yeah, so our restorative justice program essentially started with a class that was called leadership class. We would learn about different topics, about respect, about privilege, about the 4 I's of oppression, about what restorative justice really meant and what it was. Then we were moved up into learning more on one-on-one conversations on how to hold the space, how to have a conversation more in depth, and how to build that community. And essentially we would have to go during the leadership class. Every Friday we would go into 9th grade classes, and we would conduct a circle for them, in which we would also talk about different topics, about current events, about, insecurities, about struggles in high school, bullying, anything sort of like that. So it was just a lot of community building and setting up that vulnerability within each other.
So when I started that class 7 years ago, it was very adult led. I was the teacher, you all were the students. I knew about the circle process, you practiced, you engaged, and then you went and did circles with other students. Can you talk about how the work, what changed, what did we change in that structure to make this more intergenerational?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, you started as a teacher, and I was one of the students in that class. And throughout the time, you had the ability to kind of step back and let youth lead, in the sense of having one person who was considered a TA, and for them to do the class, obviously with your help and with your guidance, and they were able to teach just as much as you were teaching us. And then next year, I was able to have the ability to be one of the head TAs along with 4 other TAs. And I would touch base on you at least once a week, but you weren't really guiding me as much as, well, you weren't really in the classroom as much as a previous TA and as whenever I was in class. So it was a lot of stepping back and giving the right resources and being able to touch base here and there. But overall, I think it was a nice transition into letting the youth lead.
Can you explain, like, if there was a principal or someone on the call, why is it important, or what is the added benefit of doing this work intergenerationally?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of benefits in the sense of, at least in the school sense, it takes away that vision of us versus them between students and teachers into a we. So it's not as in us versus them, it's we are a team and we have to understand each other and work with each other. And just like Heather mentioned earlier, us as youth, we are learning from adults just as much as adults are learning from us. A lot of times change, generations change. We all grow up with different childhoods, different TV shows. So we're definitely learning from each other. So the benefit of it, it's just that we are able to see each other, not as, oh, you have more respect because you're a principal, or you have more respect because you're a teacher. It's no, we need respect for each other because we are human. And I think it sets a nice foundation of, I am here for you and you're here for me. So yeah, I think that's a nice benefit of it.
Thank you so much. We do indeed watch different TV shows. Can you talk about, I think this is where it gets really exciting and powerful, is to think about, how does this work impact us in so many different ways? As you've impacted me, I've impacted you, the 9th graders impacted you, the people in leadership class who you taught to be teachers impacted. What does that look like? What impact has this had on your life? It could be either in school or outside of school.
Yeah, I think a big lesson that I learned, at least part of it, was being able to step back. I think that's such a strong emphasis to have, because you are able to learn how to lead, but at one point you have to step back to be able to lead others. And I think that's whenever everyone is able to grow. You're able to trust and pass on the work that you've done and trust it fully. So that's something that I definitely learned. And beyond school, I think we are able to recognize each other as humans. Growing up, we see our parents and teachers just as what they are, parents and teachers. Personally, me, I always saw my parents as like superheroes. They're able to do everything, you know. My mom could cook, she could clean, she can run errands. My dad's always working. But I never really considered how they were feeling. I never considered, is this too much work for you? Or how can I help you more? Or how can I be more understanding? It wasn't until I was part of this program that I was able to step back and say, well, she is just as human as I am. She probably gets tired just as much as I do. And same thing with teachers. You know, sometimes we say, well, you didn't grade this, or this is graded late, you know, you weren't able to help me with tutorials, you weren't there, you didn't want to help. When in reality, maybe they had a loved one who passed away, maybe they had a doctor's appointment, maybe they were having a rough day and they just physically couldn't be there. So it's a lot of that, of stepping back and really seeing people as who they are and their struggles. And I mean, it goes on beyond even when you're in your work, you know. So I think it's a beautiful thing to have in intergenerational work. You know, we can learn from each other.
Thank you so much, Leslie. It's a shout out to Dorothy Vandering, because we all studied her definition of honoring one another in our humanity. And I just want to pass it off to Brenda so that we can open it up for the Q&A now. Brenda, did you want me to start on one of these questions here?
Sure. How about I'll say them out loud,
Great.
and I'm just going to start at the very top because it starts with a big thank you, and so I'm sure there's many more thank yous out there. So thank you for this work. This work, as important as it is, comes with personal, professional, and other risks. How have you stayed resilient as you push towards liberation and against hierarchy in your own context? Who would like to speak to that question? Evelin, go for it.
Evelyn, we can't hear you.
Much of this work does call on being able to take the time to regroup, take the time to ground ourselves in our values. And that was a point that I wanted to definitely make, was that this was not a doing work. And those of you that are in restorative justice and the vastness of its field probably have begun to understand that this isn't something we just do. It ends up being part of who you are and how we be, as we say, how we be and how we walk in the world. So when you speak of asking about our resilience, it really, really takes going back to center ourselves and being rooted in something much bigger. And we acknowledge that the wisdom of our humanity, the wisdom of taking care of each other, is ancestral, and going back to those roots of being able to honor one another and honor ourselves in that process. So it really takes a lot of phone calls to friends, walking in nature, many of the self-care practices that have been promoted, but it's also journaling and really acknowledging how we carry so much trauma, so many intergenerational pain, and then the stories that we hear. So it's really embodying and looking to practices that keep us healthy and keep us grounded, whether it's dancing, whether it's journaling, and spending time with loved ones and people that raise your vibration. So it's not just a script that you show up doing, and then it's also modeling that for the young people and sharing that liberation. So the hierarchy is going to be there, but that's so much of the knowing that in doing this work, and the faith in the power of the work that we're doing. So I'm very much driven, and gives me a lot of resilience in that vision and that power that I feel when we're together, particularly with young people who have so much hope and freshness in their perspective, and rolling with them and believing in them and being guided and led by them. So yeah, that's my answer. If anyone else wants to jump in on that.
Does anyone have anything to add? That was beautiful, Evelyn, and so important.
I think the one thing I would add is something that folks can delve into later in chapter 9 that connects to this around transforming leadership, that young people taught us that by working in, as partners in intergenerational partners in restorative justice, that it had transformed the way that they led in and out of schools. And one of the things I feel that, especially from this current generation, that I have consistently learned from, that I don't feel that mine was taught in the same way, is around self and community care and slowing down. And, being on a national call of like the Dreamers Network in the US, and like they pause and have us all breathe together when there's like thousands and thousands of people and led by young people. And just that, I see that way more now than I did when we were younger. And I feel like we're consistently learning to breathe and slow down in ways that this generation is demanding. And I think I feel like they're reminding our generations to do that. And I'm really thankful for your generation, Leslie, and the ones that come after you for reminding us of that. I think you're quoted in the book actually saying something about that. So yeah. Anita,
Yeah.
did you want to speak? Oh, sorry.
Well, thank you, Demointe, for that question. I just changed schools, so I don't know how resilient that is. I think we're all resilient, right? I think I pushed and I pushed and I pushed, and some really great things happened. Leslie did some great work. The work is still happening there, but then at a certain point, we got to find another place where we can shift what's happening. I saw another question, and Brenda, I don't want to just jump questions, but it just reminds me, as someone with 2 daughters, I'm trying to shift things on my daughter's campus that I see a extreme amount of privilege, but not really focusing on the inequities that are happening for the subpopulations of students with disabilities, African-American students, lower income students. And so I just think, where can I slip in some critical consciousness? So there's a question on here about, how do you do this with kindergarten through 3rd grade? And my one place, and I actually shared this with the Demointe, I'm happy to see them because we just connected, is a bulletin board. We could do a bulletin board for the 2nd grade, and they needed volunteers to come. And so I went and did one on Native American Heritage Month, because I know a few years ago, my older daughter was asked to dress like a pilgrim or a Native American during before Thanksgiving, which is just blows my mind. And I love the teacher, but so to try to find a way at that young age of how do you communicate, what are our morals, what are our ethics, what do we value, how do we value other human beings? Of course, Circle lends itself to what's happening in elementary schools already, but then also, starting to address some of those issues of power. And what do you notice about, there's so many different ways, to use toys, to do role plays, to use music. Leslie can probably speak. Leslie's worked with elementary school students as well and done training. So Leslie, I don't know if you want to add to how do you do this work with kindergarten through 3rd grade. I just think it's a wonderful question, because I wouldn't want us to forget about that age as well.
Yeah, I think I love working with kids. I absolutely love them. They can be chaotic, of course, but I think it's quite simple. Children are so simple and they're very direct. It's like saying, I've done circles with Dr. Wadhwa's daughters and things like that, and done little groups. And I currently babysit kids who also, I'm gonna share this a little bit out of context, but anyways. So essentially I babysit this kid. He's 9 years old. He goes to the same elementary school that I went to. And they're doing circles at his elementary school. And to me, that's so, I was surprised that he has this advantage that I didn't know about until I got into high school. He's able to come and tell me, hey, like, I want a hug, or like, hey, I need attention, or hey, can I have this, or can I have that, or like these kids nowadays know what they are feeling, and that's such a privilege. Like I could not even think about this when I was their age. I was struggling with my own emotions. I was struggling with how to, emphasize my emotions and put them out there without feeling judged or without being too much. So I think for me, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. We can ask a child how they're feeling with even emojis, with a number from 1 through 10, with, oh, what's your favorite book? Like even just topics that are not so current events, still applicable and are still able to make a community amongst them. The kid comes and he's like, today we had a question about our favorite ice cream or our favorite video or like a favorite movie. So that just makes community within his classroom, right? So it'd be wonderful to implement that in every elementary, obviously in every school. I think it's very helpful. So I do think that this can work, and I do believe in it. And it's just using language that's direct, straightforward, fun. Kids these days they like to move around, having like hot seat and, head and shoulders, knees and toes, all those things that are being implemented can work.
Can I share a little something? Oh, let's go ahead. Okay, so thank you, Leslie. I think you gave some excellent examples, and highlighting that is that agency that you spoke of is really so highly valuable and probably newish in this generation of acknowledging that. And many people think that restorative justice in schools is only addressing conflict, but so much conflict is minimized in the community building, in the fun, in the belonging and the empathy that's built when you get to hear and get to know your peers and get to know your teacher, right? So much of this is also that relinquishing of power at a time where we're just getting to know each other as humans, and that humanizing aspect, to then get to a place like I share in my trainings. That's what we're looking to restore, is what we've created. That community, that human feeling, when we're looking to, versus just applying the aspects of restorative justice when there's conflict, but building community and seeing one another in our humanity, and when there's pain, but when there's joy also, when there's challenge and when there's wisdom. I have something to say, and that acknowledgement, that goes a very long way. So for Hazel Barron, spaces and places, circle time, but also in classes when students are sharing from what they know versus the expectation that they would know what an adult knows, goes a long way in building the sense of self that many times minimizes some of the conflict and lack of empathy that arises from that. Thank you.
Heather, I think you're a good person to speak to the intergenerational partnerships beyond school.
Oh, great. I think, yes, it definitely is beyond school. I mean, we all exist beyond school and that institution. So I think thinking of that it's like ripples in and out, right? Or breath in and out through community. So an example I think that I would share is we get, I mean, I think if we're lucky, we get to be involved or stay connected to young people we've worked with as they get older and they become next generations. And so what does it mean to have a strong alumni network where alumni are coming back in different roles that value their experience and skills and pay them for their time, and support continuing to grow that movement. And so, I mean, I always think about work and youth engagement as working yourself out of a job. And so that it's about young people taking over the job so that we can move on to, we can do other things. And those young people then doing the same for the next generation of young people, right? And so what does that mean? And so that's where I would say it's strongest, is the alumni network. And we're really blessed and lucky in Oakland that we work with alumni who are now in their late 20s that have been doing restorative justice since they were in middle school, Or we have, you know, elementary students that come up and they maybe did elementary school, they did restorative justice and they were in elementary school, didn't in middle, and then now they are in high school. And then other students come back. And what we're trying to do is build out in our expanded learning summer hubs where both alumni or trainers and current high school students are employed as internship job training programs over the summer to support restorative justice in expanded learning summer hubs. So how can we really integrate and embed the importance of relationship and community building in all aspects? So I'd pass it on back to Brenda.
That's so exciting, Heather. I remember when Our Joy started, and it's just created such a wonderful ripple effect, not only in Oakland, but many other places. So that's wonderful. So Gareth asks great questions about how do you balance the capacity to lead with a large number of content goals along with these deep relational goals where you're building the web, the fabric of the community through restorative justice and practices. Does anyone want to speak to that?
Well, some of the work that I do in schools is incorporating them in the ideas of community building within their school environment, right? So there's the content goal in the classroom, but there's also other opportunities, whether it's meeting at lunch and opening space for diverse groups of young people to have dialogue and have conversation. And I'm a big proponent of talent shows, for young people to shine and be able to share their talent, but also work together from various walks to make something happen. It's also displaying and creating, taking the lead from the young people as to what should we do? What are some ideas that they have, and support them? Like literally, it doesn't have to be top down, whether about what it is, but just creating the space to support their ideas that are oftentimes quite fun, quite engaging, and many times have a critical lens, especially if they're taking the lead. So I think that the harder part is it does take some time outside the classroom, but within the classroom is really honoring the capacity and creating a culture of care within the classroom, having values at the start of the year with a few revisits in the year of, how we doing, how are folks feeling in the class, and having those community agreements consistent that they come up with together, posted and revisited also, especially when conflict is arising, and being able to say, are we acting within our agreements, and how do we return back to them? What are some things that we can do? And creating time and space. So it may not be every day, but providing the time consistently, once a month, once a week. I also really promote check-ins, to kind of what Leslie spoke of. So students hear each other and they hear the teacher responding to humanizing questions. So we're moving on beyond just the mind and the expectations to produce, but actually the reality that everyone's just trying to walk each other home and make make their dreams and lives happen in a fruitful way. So just really creating those spaces for insight and human responses. So and that's ways that you're building the capacity to model that by asking those questions, and then they start to build up the questions themselves and ask them, hey, we haven't done that, and that capacity with that agency starts to be created. I hope I was able to.
Yeah, that's great. We're getting close to time. And we will make these resources available. You can contact this the diagram that you had about the extended equity to liberation. People are interested and would like to make it available. So I'll turn that over to you, but we're on 2:00, and I'd just love a lightning round of each of you. Give us a short little, little phrase or a couple of words. How do people get started? how do you get started? We'll start with Anita, and then Heather, and then Evelin, and then Leslie, you get the last word, and then I'm going to do a big thank you.
Lightning, listen, and go out of your comfort zone. I'll pass to Leslie.
I would say persistence and commitment, and I'll pass it to Evelin.
I would say definitely create the space to listen and be curious of the reality of young people and how you can support. Heather?
I would say be self-reflection and be open and lean into discomfort, be open to new ideas and new ways of doing things. And we're always learning. And I'm gonna just pass it back to Leslie to wrap it up. If there's anything else.
I just want to say thank you to everyone. And this is, like Evelin said earlier, it is a lengthy process, but it's a process that you have to be persistent and committed to see results. And like Anita said, and Heather, you have to be open, you have to be vulnerable. You have to set the example for others to follow. So if you want to see change, be the change you want to see. And I'll pass it to Brenda.
Thanks so much, Leslie. Wise, wise words. We just have to embody them every day as we walk into all our spaces that each and every one of us embody each day. So my deepest thanks to you, Anita, Evelin, Heather, and Leslie. It's really your modeling partnership. The ripple effect is so strong. You've shown that to us today. And my deepest thanks to my partners at Siri and all the technical support. My hands go up to you, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.